Andrew Sheng, who will speak with you today about strategies for economic development or development more generally. I first met Andrew back in around 1993 when I was at the US Treasury. Well, no, I was at the Brookings Institution, and Andrew is at the World Bank. Um, I almost joined a World Bank mission to China with him, but that didn't quite work out. But he went on from the World Bank to be the number two at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority for a number of years, and then was was the head of the regulatory agency for the stock exchange in Hong Kong, if I got that correct. And after that, Andrew has done a lot of advising work and teaching work, both in Malaysia and in China. And Andrew, I think you are in Penang now?
Yes, I'm in Malaysia.
Yes. So Andrew is a Malaysian national, and he has written a lot and lectured a lot, and I think he has one of the best perspectives on the economic rise of East Asia over the last 50, 60 years. So I hope I haven't. Well, Andrew, please correct anything that I've misstated and proceed.
Oh, no, I think, thank you, Lex. It's always been a pleasure. And thanks to your invitation, I gave the first lecture to Parami University in December 2020. So I thought when, Lex has asked me to give another lecture, I went back to look at my notes and I realized I gave a lecture on development finance, but it assumed that the students understood what was development strategy. And so what I've done today is to give this lecture on development strategy so that you have an idea if you really want to develop your nation in a situation of, big uncertainties. I will try and explain why strategy is better than policy, because policy assumes that you understand what the context is, and the context does not change very much. And so therefore you can change, the whole context to suit your advantage. But when the context is changing all the time, you really need to apply development in a very different way. So why we do it, how we do it, is the content of this lecture. So let me, share the document first. Now, what happened to the share? I seem to have lost my, oh, share screen. Here we are. Yes. So, okay. So the title of this, and I'm going to talk for about roughly just under 40 minutes with 33 slides. I'm going to talk about strategizing developing the age of complexity and polycrisis. And the reason is that things are changing so fast. Now, those of us who study economics, if you go to Samuelson's basic textbook on economics, it always starts with what, why, how, and for whom. But I've added the who right in the front because it assumes the Samuelson textbook assumes that you are a observer from Mars and you understand economics by observing objectively how the world is changing. But actually, you are part of the system. It's not that you are independent of your family, of your village, your town, your society, your community, your nation, and the commonwealth of everybody on this planet. So the who is not me. It's not the individual. It's actually we. It's all of us, right? So whatever we do will affect all of us, including the planet. Now, what? Well, we always think about what as the economy, but the philosopher Karl Polanyi, criticized this approach. He said the market is part of the economy. The economy is part of society. Society is part of the planet. So we really need to have a planetary ecosystem and of natural and human capital, including our consciousness of what's going on. And then why? Well, why do we want to intervene in the economy? Well, we everything we do changes each other, right? The very fact I hope through this lecture, I give you information about how to look at the economy, hopefully will change you. And by listening to your views, I will also be changed. Life is an interaction. And the why is because human beings have been very cruel to each other and also cruel to the planet. And the result is, our excess consumption is causing huge imbalances in the system. Now, the how is the most difficult part. It's easy to say, oh, this thing happens. But how do we change it? You know, and this is not about theory. Economists really often think about in terms of theory. But how do we, because, people tend to forget theory is only an assumption, a worldview of what reality is. But reality is when you change it, it actually changes, hugely. So it's really about caring, sharing, and co-creation. How do we work together? Andrew Sheng will not change the world. The best guru in the world will not change the world if he does not convince the others how to change, right? And finally, the for whom. And the for whom to me is very straightforward. We are not owners of the planet, we're stewards for the next generation. So now let me move on to the key points, what I really want to say. The first point is that the current model, the way we think about development, is imbalanced, it's unsustainable, and it is because of the obsolete neoclassical paradigm. Now, most of economics stem from Adam Smith when he wrote the book called The Wealth of Nations, right? That was kind of formal economics was discovered. Previously, economics meant household management, right? If you manage the household right, you will manage your community right, you will manage your state right, etc. Now, the problem is we are now in a complex environment, right? Everything, changes each other. So climate change is systemic change, right? The system is changing, right? It's multidisciplinary. It's about the whole ecosystem change, okay? And an economy is very often a very complex economy, right? It has very difficult history. It has very difficult human experience. It has very different institutions and culture, and changing is very difficult. So, what is systems thinking? Systems thinking is how do people think about the system? How do we change it? And very recently, it's very well understood that even an individual comprises of an open, giant, complex system. Now, why is it complex, giant system? Think about the thinking as the brain. The brain has 10 is to the power of 12. That means 12 zeros are neurons, each interacting with each other and firing away as you listen, you smell, you taste, you hear, and you watch, right? And you touch and feel. So when the complex system changes, where do you start? Because everything is entangled with each other. And the complexity scientist, Dana Meadows, who's probably one of the brilliant of the last generation persons, she said you should use leverage, small impact, small intervention, large impact. And those of us who study, traditional Chinese medicine or Asian medicine would know this is acupuncture points. Where did you put the needle so that the system flows? You allow the imbalance to be balanced, right? And what are we to do? Well, the key point that I really want to make is that we really need not a top-down system, but a bottom-up resilient ecosystem using smart villages with global creative commons. And through technology, big data, and market design, we hope that this will change the system, hopefully for the better. So let me now talk about development theory, right, and practice. Now, modern development theory really took off after the Second World War, right? When actually after Keynes, the concept of GDP, value added, was introduced. And once Keynesian GDP was introduced with the United Nations system of national accounts, there were, roughly speaking, three philosophies of how to develop. Well, the first one was a free market order, right? That's essentially the the division within the Iron Curtain, out in the free market. So there were two main philosophies. One was the export oriented globalization policy, which Asia adopted. And the other one was the Latin American system, which said we should develop import substitution. We should not import so much. We should build our own industrial capacity, grow by improving ourselves. And in the last 40, 50 years, there's no question the East Asian model, led by Japan, essentially succeeded. Export driven globalization worked, but it had its own problems, and I'll explain this later. Now, in the central planning model, which the Soviet Union adopted, it collapsed in 1991. And then, in 1978, the Chinese system adopted the central planning economy model, which when the Soviet Union failed, they went on a market-based model. And today, it is a kind of a mixed model in which there is state intervention as well as using of markets. Now, during the Asian financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and climate warming, the old model does not work anymore, right? So actually, what is the goal of development is what the United Nations call the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, by 2030, to have a more holistic, systemic improvement of social well-being, eliminate poverty, etc. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time, in this area before I go very fast into how we do things. Well, system change is very different from the current linear thinking. Okay, it's like this four jigsaw puzzle. It's entangled with each other, and it's four major parts. The first is the meta, which is the way you think about the problem. Secondly, is the macro, which is the big, like macroeconomics, the big picture issues. And then mezzo is the institutions. It's like if you have banks, if you want to do finance, you want to do money, you need banks as institutions. And you need to control banks. So you need a central bank, right? So, that's the kind of a meta and the mezzo that affects both the macro and the micro. The mezzo is the institutional link between the macro picture and the micro, their feedback mechanisms. And of course, they're all entangled. It's the growth, sustainability, and inclusion, right? So now let's think about the colonial, basis of economic development. It started with, as I said, it started with Adam Smith, although it's earlier, I can talk about that. But essentially, Adam Smith recognized that free market and capitalism basically help to promote the growth of wealth of the British Empire. But of course, the British benefited more than the colonies. And some people say, well, India benefited from colonialism, but the fact is that in 1750, the GDP of India was one quarter of the world because India had one quarter of the world's population. By the time India obtained independence, it was 4% of world GDP. But now today it's, go back to about, nearly 9%, 10%. Things have changed again under independence. Now, Karl Marx, roughly just under 100 years later, he said, capitalism is exploiting labor. So, the joke was, capitalism is about man exploiting man, and socialism, or communism is the other way around. But actually, both neglected the impact of human consumption on the planet. So, in fact, it was not just abuses against man, but also abuses against the planet. Now, in 1972, there was a Club of Rome which produced a report which says that if man continues to consume at the way it's consuming, we would run out of resources. This is very much like the demographer Malthus, which said that we can't carry on consuming and population growth as it is. Now, our population in the world is today 8 billion, 16 times larger when Malthus was writing, okay? And most of this happened in the last century, right? So in the United Nations, Conference of Parties on the Environment, COP, over 30 years, they evolved the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to achieve carbon zero, protect biodiversity, regeneration all this. But as I said, there were three schools, essentially free market, import substitution, the self-reliance model, which is Gandhi and the Latin American approach, and then the East Asian growth model. Now, this picture basically shows you, produced by the UBS on global wealth, 8.6% of the population own, roughly 86% of the world's wealth. So the wealth is very uneven. At the same time, the sustainability issues are terrible, right? Over this, kind of since 1850, population grew 5.5 times, per capita consumption grew 9 times, resource use 50 times, and carbon emission, according to the latest, IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report of scientists, is that we've gone past the 1.5 degrees Celsius. And even if we commit to what the governments commit, we're going to have some serious problem on our hands, right? So the consumption, everybody, consuming, cutting down trees, having the minerals, using fossil fuels, right? We literally, would need 3 Earths by 2030, okay? And that's why we need to move to a circular economy. It's not linear. It's not everything is a hockey stick, absolutely growth, right? And the reason why we are able to consume so much is because we are able to borrow. And that's why since 1980, in 1980, the world GDP was the same size as the financial system. Since 1980, the balance sheet of finance has grown 5 times bigger than GDP. All right. We are taking too much, we're wasting too much, we are emitting too much, right? And we're in deep trouble. Now, the SDG says, looks very good, right? But how do we do this? Because, it's not about change of the 1 billion rich people in the world. The 1 billion rich people is increasingly more rich than the 7 billion, right? And as the bottom line about climate change, when things heat up, the water level rises, there are more natural disasters, the rich lose a little bit of money and the poor pay with their lives. Okay? Climate disaster affects people very unfairly. So, to a large extent, any policy we do has to deliver change at the bottom level. And the bottom level, the reason why there's so many protests by farmers is that there's a lack of trust between those in the government who are, ruling the place and those people at the bottom, especially the farmers and the rural areas. Now, time is running out, right? SDG says, we must deliver SDG by 2030. The only 13% of SDG goals have been achieved so far. And we have only about, 7 years left to do this, right? We have less than 20 years to deliver, net zero. If not, we will definitely overshoot. Now, there's no shortage of technology. If you really look at all the studies, especially this book that I helped to produce called Buying Time of Climate Change, right? There's no shortage of technology. This knowledge is available in all the universities, in the think tanks, in expertise all around the world. Secondly, there is no shortage of funding. The central banks can increase their balance sheet 3 times, right? $7 trillion was created just, during the QE bubble, right? And there's $2.5 trillion worth of cyber money. So there's no shortage of money, right? The only problem is that how do we design the system in such a way, you intervene in the system in such a way that the system changes. And the Nobel laureate, Alvin Roth, made a very interesting paper which says sometimes the market does not work because the market, evolved naturally, but, artificial intervention, design of the market in a certain way, options market, for example, stock markets, for example, if you design it properly, it can work. Well, things like carbon markets take a lot of time. Now, very quickly, when a former McKinsey guy thought about, the origin of wealth. He said there are three things that create the wealth. The first is physical technology, which is the science, etc. The second is the social technology. That's the market, the organization, the firms. And the third one is the business model. Business model is because we need to make money. I'm not trying to say make money is bad. I'm not, make money is good. But making money, not doing excesses, is very critical, right? So we get these, how do we get the market or the state to intervene in the economy, to achieve our sustainable development goals? So very quickly, and time is running out, so I'm going to, very quickly run through this. The problem with the present system is on the left-hand side. It's done in yellow, but it's really about brown, right? It's linear, it's implemented through silos, ministry of this, ministry of that, that agency, that agency. Now, every agency will tell you, if you give me more money, I'll solve the problem, which is basically a lie, because very often these silos act independently, sometimes canceling each other out, fighting each other. It's bureaucratic, and it doesn't work. And the idea of the top-down system comes from the atomistic individualist. I am the most important person. But as the old African saying, I am because we are. We are more important than others. It's not about one person surviving. It's about the tribe surviving, the village surviving, the town surviving, the community surviving, right? And the old model is also mechanical and static, which is basically the kind of a Darwinian, not Darwinian, a Newtonian classical mechanical physics and mathematics. It is also zero sum. It means that, the part is the sum of everybody else. There is no win-win or lose-lose. Actually, reality is either win-win or win-lose or lose-lose. So it's not a special condition of zero sum. And finally, it is very difficult to coordinate. Very often there are lots of ideas, but we cannot implement them because we cannot coordinate the different silos. And thirdly, there's a mentality that is optimal. Oh, this is best practice. This is best for all of you. But suddenly there are many roads to Rome. You can approach things very differently. You can approach it with different time, right? And it's not about a universe, it's about a pluriverse. So the bottom-up holistic approach is organic. It's looking at circular, how things change through loops. It's even the atom is not a particle. It's actually protons, neurons spinning around each other, right? It's organic, it's entangled, it's win-win, there's coexistence, there's better feedback, there's trade-offs, right? So it's really pluralistic. How do many things that are very different survive with each other? So the failure of the current paradigm is leading to permacrisis. We are seeing climate change. We're seeing, a human conflict, right? There are massive imbalances. There's war, and but the majority, go on as if nothing has happened. And of course, that's really due to the paradigm, which is why I think, this is very important. I mean, but I won't go deeply into this. So if this is the paradigm problem, is because of the way we look at the problem and we behave, right? How do we correct this trapped human intelligence? How do we break out of the box, out of the box thinking? How do we connect the dots before we say this, right? We cannot change if we are not aware that we are wrong, right? As Einstein said, things cannot be changed by the old way of doing things. So we need to liberate the consciousness at the village level, right? And we need to understand cities were basically formerly villages. If you go to London, if you go to Tokyo, you will realize they're actually villages that grew closer and closer to each other, eventually to form a mega city, right? And, because we can't, get involved with, 30, 40 million people as individuals. We live within a small group, okay? Now, half of mankind actually lives in the rural areas, roughly 45 million. But 5% of the indigenous population guard or are stewards of 80% of the ecosystem, okay? And small and medium micro enterprises account for 40% of GDP and nearly 90% of all enterprises, right? And also a lot of innovation. And most of the soil and soul of the country resides with the villagers. So we really need to move away this idea of ego, right, towards an eco. It's an ecosystem. How do we, create co-share, remove concentration, right? So it's flat, right? It's more interactive with each other. Now, the state and the market cannot overcome the silos. We need the community at the bottom up to move on, right? So we've seen polarization. Okay, the people are fighting each other. In the market we have concentration. Some of the top 100 companies control more than their share of the resources. 1% of the richest people in the world, billionaires, or today nearly trillionaires, control most of the wealth, right? So the bottom half is really what we use is the idea of the social venture, like the Silicon Valley network model. Now, we do this because we're trying to achieve the sustainable development goals, and I don't want to go into this too much. The smart open village is that, look, if only the top has technology, the bottom does not have technology, the top will rule the bottom. But if the top neglect the interests of the bottom, which is what we are seeing right now, then the bottom will suffer and inequality will be worse and worse until there's revolution. Okay, right? And we don't want that. We want evolution. We want stability. We want peace. We want prosperity. So the smart open village acknowledged the human at the center of choice, right? With different domains, governance, self-awareness, trade and commerce, finance, etc. So SOV is therefore not about removing carbon from the atmosphere, but how do we get to well becoming? It's well-being that we are moving to a better state than currently, right? And what we're seeing is that the health is like the top of an iceberg, but all the problems is at the bottom that are hidden from us. And we're looking at it wrongly. So how do we translate the meta-level sustainable development goals into actionable projects of the SOV is really what this lecture is all about. And what I really wanted to show is that, look, this is not the only model. It's the model that is a little bit more complexity oriented. It follows the Schumacher idea, small is beautiful. Is that if the village is healthy, the community is healthy. The community is healthy, the city can be healthier. And if the cities are healthy, the state will be healthy, the planet will be healthy. But it cannot be that the city is rich and the villages are poor. And we see this all the time, right? So there's no shortage of wisdom, there's no shortage of technology, grassroots solution, know-how, and funding, but we are not sharing this with each other. How do we share this? And if we go into the internet, you suddenly there's a lot that uses artificial intelligence to find the best experts, the best funding to aid the people in the villages to do what they need to do, right? Very often, at the village level, it's always what we call the last mile problem. We're just short of this. How do we get short of this? Well, look at what is happening today. If you are a doctor and you are a student of somebody in the top hospital in the United States, today with an iPad, you can take a photograph of exactly what the symptoms are of your patient. You get all the data on the iPad, you transmit it to the top professor. The top professor can see it straight away, give you immediate his opinion or her opinion of what needs to be done, and you can undertake the operation, etc. In fact, if you've got the latest robotics, somebody, halfway around the world can help you solve your problem domestically. So we're using the Silicon Valley network model, which creates an ecosystem of initiatives to unleash what we call the theory of the adjacent possible. A mentor of mine, Stuart Kaufman, who was a biochemist, evolved the theory of the adjacent possible. He was thinking about how cells actually, mix together with each other in order to combine new cells and, eventually, living different living forms. And of course, it takes a long time to get this together, and suddenly it all takes off, which is exactly the hockey stick effect. Well, what we really want to do now is to create the information network. The reason why we are not able to coordinate across silos is because different silos have different databases, different information, different values, and they fight each other. The only way you can actually create the market is to have common standards of data. You have data sharing, you have data, processes, and you have institutions have shared common goals, and that requires today your mobile phone. If you have your app on the mobile phone at the village level to get all the data, you can share that data straight away, right? At almost zero cost. So, we can create data dashboards which are able to monitor all this and change very fast. Okay? So the whole idea is to use the technology and the funding to empower the villagers or the masses, to improve themselves. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's me ordering what to you to do. We say, here is all the free knowledge that is available, right? And here we are able to crowdfund all the financing to help you change, right? It's not that much money, but you can help you change. So the bottom up of compilation of the One Earth balance sheet, because every individual has a balance sheet, every village has a balance sheet, every town has a balance sheet, every nation has a balance sheet, and all these add up to form the One Earth balance sheet. So we do this by learning by doing. It's no use talking about it. So, Sneha, myself, and, various others went down to the villages and we discussed with them what is their problem, what are their issues. And we hope that this pilot, which we will implement in 4 indigenous population villages in Malaysia, will be implemented in the coming year in India and Bhutan and elsewhere. And we hope to be able to scale this. And the challenges learned that we've learned so far is that bottom-up change takes patience. It's about people. People do not change overnight, but we want to pilot this to understand why is it that is, the barriers to change. We need to get support from the universities and the think tanks to get a transdisciplinary and emerging domains to help these people. We need to develop the systems thinking. We need to move at kind of wartime pace, right? It's not about fighting. It's about a climate war. We are, if we do not change, we will, burn up, or we will fight each other, and we'll blow ourselves up. So strategizing, team funding, and messaging are really the key. So how can we co-create, a winning situation? Well, we're working with the different universities, University of Glasgow, University of Bristol, hopefully, Wawasan Open University in Malaysia, and hopefully if Parami is interested, we can work with each other. We can create the global Creative Commons to collate all the information that are available, deliver it to you through the internet. And we work with the different villages, the think tanks, and the policymakers. And because most of us are city workers, we think about our own lifestyle and bring positive change. And then if we network everything together, we create a sum that is more than the parts, right? So students, we can volunteer, business professionals, we can actually give advice. And as strategists, we give ideas on how to move forward. So to sum up, we need a holistic system solution to climate change. We need a knowledge, data, artificial intelligence infrastructure to create a global Creative Commons. We need to liberate the mindset of the masses against this just consume, 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 right? It's about sufficiency. It's about, need rather than greed, right? We need a multidimensional development model. And there is no unique model, okay? Each country is experimenting with its own. And we need to move faster because time is not on our side. And we need to become the change that we want to see in the world. So let me stop here and be happy to answer questions. And I've just spent 36 minutes, so I think we have enough time. Okay, let's fire away. Let me stop share
Thank you
first.
so much, Professor Andrew Sheng. Yeah, so we'll open the floor for the students to ask. I think you can unmute, put your hands up and ask, unmute and ask
Or you
directly.
can put it into the chat box and I can read
Yes.
it. Okay? I know I'm trying to give you a lot of information. There's a lot to digest, but feel free to ask.
Atta?
John, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Andrew Sheng. With your talk, although I have very limited information about economy and planning, but this talk has really inspired me a lot. Particularly when you say the empowering the villages, the villages become healthy, the community become healthy, the nation become healthy, and the planet become healthy. That is a very well thought out. But now my one major challenge that we face from the part of the world I'm coming from is the fact of that the village are left out to struggle on their own, and the people who are in charge, or the people who come and try to enlighten them and give them the way, predated on them. And how can we be able to build that system in which we empower the village to become more healthy? Thank you.
Well, you see, the point is that suppose you were in Africa or Latin America and you're in a village and there was no outsiders. You have to live with what you have, right? The reason why you work with each other is because you must work with your brother, your sister, your father, your children, your elders in order to survive against you know the environment. There could be snakes, there could be predators, there could be other things. You work together. Then you became globalized, and the minute you globalize, somebody tells you that you must have a fossil fuel. You must use energy. You can use a fossil fuel to cut down the tree, and you cut down the tree. Oh, it's very nice. Very quickly, you cut down the tree. Okay, and suddenly the calculation of the buying the chainsaw is added to GDP. Oh, your GDP goes up, but your tree is gone. Your tree is gone. Your environment is gone. Okay, and then you are less healthy, because you're over reliant on a fossil fuel driven system, right? So the point is self-help sometimes. I'm not arguing that we completely deglobalize. We don't be global. The whole idea of the Creative Commons is that the rest of the world will help you maximize your potential. It's about empowering you and the village how to improve yourselves. Okay? This is not charity. This is helping you to help us because you are the guardian of your environment. And if you cut down the carbon in your village, you cut down the carbon for the rest of the world, right? It's not about me trying to encourage you to, let me give you more money. You spend more money, you emit more carbon, you will help the world. That's not true. In fact, if we help you to regenerate the forest, it will capture carbon, it will preserve water, it will improve the nourishing foods, right? Okay. Now, why does a lot of this don't happen? And Lex has raised a very interesting question. What is a silo? Well, let me give you an illustration. When we evolve money, we need to create an institution, right? An institution is a commercial bank. Well, what does a commercial bank do? The commercial bank is to take the savings from you, right? And then lend it to somebody who wants to either build a house or consume or build or government to build a road, etc. Okay, right? But increasingly, the banks are no longer lending to people who need the money. Because if you don't have money, if you don't have collateral, I'm not going to lend to you, right? And if you want to borrow from the bank actually has a lot of the database on you, but they don't know how to use it. And because the banks, do not know how to use the data, the platforms like Alibaba come in, like Amazon come in, like Google come in, and then they provide you, they have the much better knowledge about what you need, they can supply you. Now, why is a silo? That's the silo, right? If I am, a platform, I only do what is good for my platform. I really don't care about the others. But actually, the problem happens in the government, for example. If the government wants to help you, they have the Department of Public Works that helps you. They have the Department of Waterworks that help you. The Department of Agriculture that helps you. But every one of them will ask you the same questions because their database do not talk to each other. And if they're not helping you, they're adding to your transactions cost. Let's give you an illustration, right? If you are living in a city, you want to borrow money, it's very easy. You just go to the local bank and then you fill out a form. Even on your phone, you can get that information. If you are in the rural village and you want to borrow from the bank in the nearest city, it may take you one whole day away from your farm, cost you a lot of money to go to the city. When you go to the city, what will your branch manager ask you first? Where is your letter of identification? Oh, I forgot to do that. I thought you were supposed to help me. I am here to help you. Oh, I cannot lend to you unless you give me your ID. Then you say, okay, I have to go back to the village to get it. Next day you come back, you have already, then they say, where is your land title? If you have no land title, I cannot lend to you. You got to spend another day, go back. The transactions costs of doing business for a poor farmer in the rural areas is easily 10, 20 times that of somebody in the city. You see what I'm trying to say? Right? And it's due to the way the system is designed, right? And they don't talk to each other. The government department, very often, as they say, government departments, the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. And so, to a large extent, if you get smart villagers working, if every villager actually uses their mobile phone app to put down all the information that is available and tell them what is it that they need, the policies could be designed better. Okay? And it's really about the people thinking not is what is good for me as the civil servant or as the salesman for a company. It is what is good for the consumer. But it's not just the consumer. The linear approach in the present model is they look at you only as a consumer. You must spend this. Every day the advertising says, you must have this, you must have that. And if you don't have it, why don't I give you a credit card? And when the time for you to pay back, oh, you cannot pay back. What they forget is that the consumer is also an income earner. If suppose on the mobile phone, you can both earn money as well as spend money, then you are happier, aren't you? Right? The whole model that is designed at the present moment is linear. It's one way, whereas actually the economy is circular. The income, once you have income, then you can spend. If you cannot, whatever you don't spend, you can save. Whatever you want cannot save, you can borrow. And then it goes back to your income. Is it sustainable or not sustainable? So everything is a circular economy, right? So actually, government departments, companies could think not linearly, not in silos, only for themselves, but actually as an ecosystem. How do we help each other? Okay. Now, any other question? The right. That's right. Social stock exchange. Well, the Indians have a idea of a social stock exchange. The problem with the current stock exchange model is that it's very elitist. There are only 57,000 companies listed in the world in stock exchanges. There are 500, minimum of half a billion, 500 million small, medium enterprises which cannot get the capital from a stock exchange. The Indians have a great idea. They say, why don't we create a social stock exchange? What is a social stock exchange? It is to help social enterprises. What is the difference between a social enterprise and a profit-making enterprise? Well, I mean, if you really look at your mom and pop shop, your local shop, your mother and father selling noodles, making a simple restaurant, a simple farmer, they are social enterprises because they're not for profit. They are just to keep the family alive. They are to save enough for the education of the children, to save for health, etc. They're social enterprise. Now, why does the social enterprise can transact on the social stock exchange? The Indians have a great idea. Instead of trading a piece of paper which says that this promises you that sometime in the future you can get profit, this piece of paper says it is, zero return, zero coupon, no return instrument. It's a legal instrument to transfer charity from A to B. So if I am a social enterprise, I can list on the social exchange and say, I need money to build a dam in my village so that my village will have water. I promise you, if you give me the money, I will build that dam. And when that dam is built, it is good for my village, it is good for the electricity, it's energy saving, etc., etc. And basically, the stock exchange is a institutionalized, those people who understand Islamic finance, institutionalized zakat or wakaf, which is institutionalized charity. I institutionalize a transparent way of giving money in charity or aid or impact investing that will help make impact on change in our society. Okay? So next one, model of the stock exchange. Any other one? Silo. What could be the long-term impact for the Myanmar economy due to the youth leaving and fleeing out of the country? Well, that's exactly why I suggested the smart open omni village. Okay? Because if you do not restore the health of the villagers, the young will always leave the village to go to the city. And then the city finds overcrowding, lots of crime, lots of problems, right? Social inequalities. So why don't we spend the money in the villages? When I was at the Central Bank of Malaysia, I was involved in development policy. I remembered one thing from my lesson in that area. If you spend money on the villages, the money will slowly drift from the villages to the city. If you spend money in the city, the money will go out to London and elsewhere. Because everybody says, oh, I want to get rich, I want to spend money outside, right? And I'm not spending on my own people. The less money you spend on your own people, the poorer your people become. So, spend money to help your own people, import the technology, get the knowledge, get the market organization, get the funding, you will improve yourself. Okay? Right? Any other questions? Yeah, isolation from the rest of the world. Yeah, I think, there is, if you're too open, you suffer problems. If you're too close, you also suffer problems, right? There's different types of problems for different economies. There is no simple answer in these complexity issues, okay? But all I'm just suggesting is if there's too much top down, move to a bottom up strategy, right? It's difficult to make parents and villagers aware that education I agree. But what sort of education? Education is the easily said, but not easily done. Everybody quarrels over education. Okay? So let me tell you what's wrong with the current linear education. The linear education is you spend 2 years in kindergarten, 5 years in primary school, 7 years in 6 years or 7 years in secondary school, then 3 years in university, etc., etc. How come most of the young people in developing markets come out of university cannot get a job? And the answer is the employers say the universities are not educating them for our needs. Okay, but the universities, because they have been slow to adapt to the very rapidly changing information and technology and curricula, they are teaching obsolete information. Okay, now as you know, in Silicon Valley, 40% of the people hired in Silicon Valley, 40% do not finish their degrees. The companies in Silicon Valley prefer to hire somebody who has done an actual project on innovation or testing or creativity rather than just going for a degree. Okay, and I agree with the Silicon Valley technology people. I prefer to find young people who are open-minded, who are willing to take risks, who are think independently, and then will make change. Okay, because doing more of the same will not solve some of the problems of the world. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any in the chat so far.
Yeah, there are several questions in the chat.
How are the roles of the government and policy framework in transition to bottom-up system? The role of the government is no longer I take your money and then I will distribute it in the traditional way. It is more about helping the bottom-up, improve themselves. All right. Now there's a trend that you've seen in Thailand and in Brazil, which was that during the period, sometimes direct transfers to the villagers are better than delivering money through different agencies. What do you mean by direct transfers? Well, there was, the earlier period of development in Thailand in which every village was given 200,000 baht, to deal with, to spend as they wish to deal with their own problems, rather than saying, well, if I give you money, this is the form that you have to fill. You have to tell me, how many roads you build, or how, why do you need a bridge? Why do you need a health center? Why do you need it? Well, by the time I explained it to you, my needs are already changed, right? So governments have to be much better listening. Governments have to have better feedback mechanism. Government's implementation machinery is too inflexible. State-owned planning very often does not work. It's because it's too rigid. It does not know how to change with the changes, right? So we need, much faster, much more nimble reaction to very rapid changing, to these areas. Okay. Well, how many years do we think that we still need to fully reach these goals? At the present rate, the SDG will fail. Let me be very blunt about it. So the SDG goals need to be implemented more flexibly, okay? And we need to have discussions with different governments, experimenting with different ones. So if you really think about this, right? Everybody says, "Oh, we agree with the SDGs," right? But how do you design these SDG into very different programs and projects, etc.? Is very difficult, and lots of governments don't know how to do it. Okay, and so if I am the regional development bank, like World Bank or Asia Development Bank or African Development Bank, I will help you, but you must give me a government guarantee. And if I can't give you the government guarantee, I don't get a loan. Right? So is it helping you to help yourself? Yeah, somewhat, but very often a lot of the loans of the current Bretton Woods system are crisis lending. The amount of most of the loans at the current of the IMF, World Bank, a lot of it is for crisis handling. Yet these countries are already in deep trouble, and then you lend to them. What about prevention, right? Lending for prevention. How do we work on these areas? So, we really need to change the mindset, okay? Can you give greater details on how your strategy in being tested in 4 villages in Malaysia? How to give the Malaysia the data they need? Well, this is it. We discovered that it was not easy to get the data. So we said we'll write the app. So we financed the writing of an app so that we give the workers in the villages this they all have a lot of them have mobile phones. Now that they can put in the app. Once we have the app, we have the data. Then we're trying to get university students to help us write up about the villages so people know about that these are one of the 8 most poorest villages in Malaysia. A lot of people don't know about this, right? Okay, so if the grassroots have a better understanding of what's happening to them, and we attract the universities to come and help them, or if the companies are willing to adopt projects in the villages, right? Some of the projects in the villages are not that expensive. The building of a chain bridge, right? A wire bridge across the river, okay? Because to cross the river, either you use a little boat or you can build a chain bridge. Chain bridges cost 150,000 ringgit, which is about what? Less than $30,000. And this is well within the ESG donations from various companies. And so when people are aware of this, some companies gave, some charities gave, some people gave. So suddenly, this bridge was built. Okay, and if more people come and see the village, then they say, oh, there's another project here being built, a homestay, there's a multi-cropping, there's organic farming, all this. So a lot of it is about, getting to understand, right? Well, if the villagers suddenly became aware that they can help themselves and there is technology and funding to help themselves, the community is stronger, all right? Okay, so at the moment, why do I need to listen to the village chief? He can't give me jobs, right? And there's all the people in the city care about the village chief. Oh, can you give me voting rights? Help me vote during this period. It's not about the votes. Voting is itself a feedback mechanism. It really is about building a good information feedback circular approach in which everybody begins to understand what the problems are at the grassroots level, and then you empower them to make the changes, right? Okay, is it too ambitious? If things are not ambitious, nothing is done. Why is Greta Thunberg willing to stand up and shout? She is ambitious, right? Why did Einstein, think about these ideas? It is ambitious. If nobody's got ambition, the world will not change. All right? Okay? The idea of a pilot scheme is that we cannot do everything. We must start somewhere. And you cannot start big. You must start small. If I am a billionaire, why the hell should I put my money in any village? I might as well party like a crazy rich Asian. Okay? Right or not? The reason why a lot of these startups in Asia do not work because those people suddenly become a billionaire. They are partying like crazy rich Asians. They are not giving the money to the next startup. They are not helping the other people. They just want to party because everybody tell them, oh, I have Gucci, oh, I have Dolce Gabbana. I am good. I am smart. I'm used. They are useless. These people do not help except to spend. Okay. And in fact, what they're doing is increasing more carbon. I'm not attacking them for being crazy. They want to show that they are rich. I am saying you must have social conscience. Okay. All right. Can you show us some examples of governments listening strategies that are flexible and doing good job? Well, different societies have different ways of doing things. Unfortunately, some governments listen much less than others. And if they listen well, the trouble with the present world today is that if there is no problem, we never praise people who are silent. We always praise people who talk too much and act very little, isn't it? Every politician talk a lot, deliver nothing. That's the problem. Okay? Economists can write paper after paper. They're not doing things. It's all talk. It's all paper. Those people who go back to the villages and help the villagers are the people who deserve our encouragement. Because what we need to do is to help people. I'm not saying that, we are totally charitable. When they ask me, why am I doing this? I said, the world has been very kind to me. In my 70 over years, okay, I have lived through the greatest change in the world. The world has become more rich, in some sense, a little bit more fair, but in many ways, less fair. And we have left the next generation with the greatest debt. I come from the island of Borneo. That's why I'm reinvesting in the villages in Borneo. When I grew up, it was virgin jungle from coast to coast. Today, 50% of that is palm oil, right? The pollution, of these industrial production to the environment is very, very complex, right? And we're asking people, who lived previously in a pristine jungle environment, hunter-gatherers, to suddenly become farmers overnight. They're really struggling. 8 out of the 10 poorest villages of Malaysia are in Sabah, where I come from. So I think it's time for us to act on this, right? Time is running out. I cannot deal with everybody, right? Okay, we just have to pick and choose, and hopefully, if we succeed in these villages, some of these ideas can be scaled by using this in India, in Bhutan, and in other states of Malaysia, right? Okay, some of you said you've learned enough. We need to be patient. It's not about patience. I think, we can be patient, but we just have to act. And I think, working back in the villages would really help them. Okay. All right. If there anybody who wants to talk, that's fine with me also. Okay. Any other questions? I see a lot of.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to know your thoughts on whether the pilot scheme on Malaysia could be replicated successfully in Myanmar and our current situation, and if so, how it could be implemented, in which way, why against the general rhyme?
Well, remember this. There are, the Russian. I'm sorry to use the word Russian, but this is a Tolstoy. Used to the very great. This is the 19th century, 18th century, 19th century writer Tolstoy said every family is happy for the same reasons, but they are unhappy for their reasons of their own. What this really means is that every village is in some way different, and other villages have commonalities. Okay, right? So what we really want to do is to apply these principles to help the village to find what are the common areas that can help them. So for example, if let's say we have discovered that in Nepal, a running water mill can generate electricity. If it works well in Nepal, why can't we apply that running water to apply to a village in Myanmar, or in Sabah, or in Sarawak, or in Bhutan, for example. Some of this technology can be replicated quite fast. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay? I mean, the very fact that I have an app that has already been written, you can have this app for free. Okay? If I teach a course on leadership in villages, you can have that course for free. You can adapt that course for what applies to your village. You see what I'm trying to say? Right? Now, the point is, if I were to get a free MIT course, the MIT course is designed for somebody who has, works in the West, who understands Western technology. But, I have to explain it very differently to somebody in a village, what it is, the difference between leadership in a village and a leadership working in MIT. You see what I'm trying to say? Right? So the adaptation will have to be done at your level. It's global in terms of principles, but it's local in terms of adaptation. Right? So what we're trying to do here is not to devise a one-size-fits-all pilot. It is to discover certain elements whereby, if the village is able to explain and put their notice on the global Creative Commons. The Creative Commons is like a bulletin board. It's like an advertising. I am village A in Sabah. I need help in this area. If somebody is willing to come to my village and help me solve this problem, I will be very grateful. Who knows? Somebody will come. Previously, if you have no internet, you can shout all you want, nobody will hear you. Today, you put on the internet a small TikTok, and everybody knows that your village is special, and they say, I would like to come and help your village. They can come, correct? So it really is an interaction between you as a villager or you as a city person who wants to help this village, and you are the interface between the world and the village, right? You can make a difference. That's what I'm saying, all right? Ming Tet Pan. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for your excellent presentation. And my question is that you talked about the role of technology in bottom-up economic system.
Yes.
So I feel that in my country, there are many places that do not get access to even electricity, and even in the city we do not have enough access to good Wi-Fi internet. So compared to other countries, we are really left behind. Or for example, in Myanmar, like environmentalists only focuses on awareness sharing instead of innovating the technology, environmental technology, as really necessary for my country. So the gap, the technology gap, is becoming larger and larger. And so in this case, what would be your recommendation to address these kind of issues?
Well, in the old days, you see, this was the experience that I faced. It's a very good question. Right? In the old days, I would assume, that my home state, which was one of the richest states in Malaysia, in terms of natural resources, small population, would have faster development. Unfortunately, because of small population, long village, distance to the village, to carry the cable, electricity cable, centrally prepare the power generation and put the cable to the village is very expensive. Today, if you can, in every village, you can put solar. If you put solar, you can actually, generate the electricity, or you can use river power, right? Okay, so so this is happening now. The village that we went to does not have electricity, but does not have internet. Now they should have internet, because everywhere I went, I saw satellite dishes, which means that if the Starlink is available, they can actually get the internet, right? So now I have to use, to tell to the satellite people and the government to get the internet coverage to them. Okay. Now, the minute, even if when I get this internet to them and I get electricity to them, I find that the courses to teach them on planting, on multi-cropping, on fertilizers is not available, because it's available on the internet, but it's available in English, and these people are speaking local dialect. Okay, so I need to find somebody who can translate and explain it to the way that they understand. Right? So there are transactions costs in every stage of the local adaptation. All right. So, but this is where the volunteer work happens. If people, young people who are educated like yourself at the university level, is willing to go back to the village to help the village, and we are discovering that in the village. So the reason why I'm working with this village is that the son of the tribal chief, the young man, has decided to go back to the village to help his people. And so he has actually found what he calls angels. That means young people in the village who went to get a degree, in the town, and decided they don't like the living in the town, they want to go back. And they want to use their energy to help the village grow. Right? So they are the ones who are willing to use the mobile app to get the data. They are helping us to write up, the feasibility study of project A, project B, project C, the water project, the health project, the education project, etc., etc. Okay, so we are trying to find from ourselves in a very low tech way how higher tech can help, through low tech, get people to adapt to a very rapidly changing world. And you cannot say these people don't know, because every small villagers know how to use the mobile phone. They know how to use it, right? And in Africa, there is what is known as micro work. That means if every person in the village uses the mobile phone to generate digital images for the AI machines, they will be paid micro wage. Even if they get $1 or 50 cents an hour, they never had it before. You see? So if my mobile phone, which is a spending machine, can become an earning machine, I'm a winner. All right? And I think I want to change the mindset of big companies, medium-sized companies, small companies, helping the village, rather than saying just, use more chemical fertilizers, use more chemical pesticides. No, I want to, get young people to go to the villages, help them grow organic food, all right? Regenerate the forests, preserve the water, capture the carbon. All these ideas are possible, okay? And if it works in this village, we'll try it in another village, and we try it in another country, and then we see whether it works. We are all at the village level reinventing the wheel. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay? Well, as I said, the question about the crucial intervention of the government. The trouble is the government sometimes, a lot of governments are being torn apart by different politics. So I think civil society is a better way of changing, in my view. I always say, stop blaming other people. We always blame other people. It's them, the government. It's them, the companies. It's them. What about us? Ultimately, we are responsible. We have to do something about it. Okay, that's what I mean by the we. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna criticize the businessman or the politician or whatever. We just do our own thing. If we do it right, it's fine. If we don't do it right, the next generation will always deal with the change. Somebody will deal with it, right? Yeah, this is not about awareness. That's a very good thought. It's not about awareness. A lot of people talk only. I'm fed up with talk. Okay, I just need to do something, And that's what I'm doing, right? And we hope what I'm trying to do in sharing this with you is what we're doing, and hopefully, you can also help do in your own way in your own village. We had a conference here recently. We brought somebody from Bhutan. They understood what we're trying to achieve. They would try and experiment in Bhutan. And my colleague from India is also adapting all these ideas for India. So we're still at the pilot stage. We cannot claim success fully, but I think it looks as if it is very promising. Okay. Yeah. Common challenges. You see, the point is that you have to find the right local champions, right? The people who believe in this. We were very lucky. We found this tribal village. I mean, it's actually 4 villages, but the community chief was educated in the West. He's got a PhD in agricultural economics in the United States. He went into development, and he believed that the right way to help his people is to go down the village and help his people at the village level. And when I saw what he was doing, I said, yes, that is something that I want to help him. Now, land ownership. Yeah, the land ownership. Well, in Malaysia, the land is owned by the state, but you are given either what is known as a temporary occupation lease, which can be for, in most cases, 50 years, sometimes 99 years, and then you can have more or less 999 years forever title, freehold, what is more or less known as freehold, right? But one of the problems with the land ownership is that and most of these villages are given 15 acres, I think it's roughly around 3 hectares each to plant palm oil or rubber or whatever. But the problem is, when I'm given so much land, some of it is on a hill, some of it will be eroded by water, because the river changes the course, right? And some of it is not plantable at all because it's all very rocky, so poverty still occurs even if I'm given the land, right? And then in the ownership of the natural resources, as you know, in many countries, if it's minerals, the minerals belong to the state. And if it's the forest, there is what is known as the forest management unit, which means that somebody has the right to go and cut down the trees, which, it's very complicated, and it affects the livelihood of all these indigenous people. So it's not an easy issue. I mean, every country has got their own, particular problems in this. Yeah, how do multilateral development banks? Well, if you go to ADB will tell you the minimum size loan is 100 million US dollars, maybe 50 million. All right. And, how much do the villagers need? Maybe, each village will probably, each project, maybe even need less than 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, right? So how many villages do I have to add together to get 100 million? Okay. And, even though I want to do it in this village, I have to get the approval of the state government. The state government will have to get the approval of the federal government, because the ADB will not, the Asia World Bank, ADB, etc., will not lend to you unless the state government guarantees. Okay, so a lot of this, and so the latest ADB thinking is blended finance, right? How does ADB work with charitable organizations, commercial banks, bond markets to blend this finance? Do you know how costly it is to do this? You have to be the expert in this. You have to have very high costs of getting all this to work together. Okay? And if you give it to one department, the other department may not agree. You get to another department, the other department says, I disagree with you. I want to take charge. And that's why a lot of these so-called complex solutions do not work. So my view is, let's study this at the grassroots level. I'm tired of fighting these huge bureaucracies who everyone says I am right and you guys don't know what you're talking about. And suddenly when I go down to the villages, I noticed that the villagers know about these problems better than the biggest expert. Okay? There's this story of how, a very large project failed because they never listened to the locals how to plant that particular plant in that community. Experts are not experts if they do not know how to listen, right? How do we sustain this over the long term? My friend, if I can succeed over the next 3 years, I am happy. Whether it succeeds longer will depend upon the younger people, all right? Even the greatest of empires do not last more than a few hundred years. And so therefore they will come, they will go. All right. All we hope for is what we do in the next decade or so. We can slow down the climate heating and do what we can. All right. It is sometimes above my pay grade. Okay. If I have said something that you feel is useful and you feel you can do something about it, then that's the way to go. If you don't find it useful, that's fine with me. My attitude is, I'm mobilizing my friends' capital, people who follow me, and investing in these villages. I'm not hoping for a profit. I'm hoping that they will change themselves. And the leader of the project, the community, and I'm finding great satisfaction because the leaders of the community all understand this is not charity. This is helping them to help themselves. Anything else?
I think we will end the session soon. I thank you so much for this very engaging discussion. I have saved all the questions, or if your question is not answered, let us know, and we'll just forward them to Professor Andrew, and maybe he can share some thoughts on the questions that are not answered.
Yeah, if you can sort of copy and paste them into one document, send it to me by email, I'll look at them and think about it. I can't react. My eyesight's not so good nowadays, so I cannot see all the detail. Okay, just had my cat.
We'll do that, but you read really, really fast from the chat. So thank you so much.
Okay, so nice to spend time with all of you. This work is not just myself; it's a colleague of several colleagues of mine who helped to produce the presentation. Okay.
So much, Andrew.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
great. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.